Hey everyone, we're going to be doing a 60,000 mile service on a 2015 VW GTI. It's the first year of the Mark 7s. It's also low on coolant, and it's not on the chart to change the belt wire. We're going to be doing that anyway. Um, Now, as far as the coolant and the oil, the coolant has to be G13. If you use anything other than G13, um, what ends up happening is the coolant kind of gets slimy and really thick and turns brown. It starts to clog up things inside the motor and the radiator, and it starts to cause issues. On older VWs, it will eat the head gasket. I think this pre 1999, if I remember correctly. All is the same way. VW spec. This is 502.00 and 505.00 compliant. I usually like to use a fluid extractor to change the oil out of the dipstick hole. Kind of keeps things clean, and it won't get rid of everything. You'll probably still have half a quart left in the bottom of the pan, but it just makes everything so much easier and clean. Alright, to get the oil packs out, there is a 10 mil nut that holds the ground wire for each individual coil pack, and then right underneath it there's another 10 millimeter nut, kind of part of a stud that holds the actual coil pack in place. Alright, on the these clips here, pretty much any clip that's in the engine compartment, what you want to do is you want to push the plug in, and then it'll release the lock. Now these have never been taken off before, so they're a little tight, but that's how you properly get these off without breaking them. And I've never seen these kind of coil packs before, but they're stuck on. They're pretty good. They're completely made out of rubber, so you can kind of, you don't have to take them out perfectly straight. If you can, they'll be better. And as you're taking these out, you want to make sure there's no oil on them, and that they're still perfectly dry. If there's oil, that means the rings on the valve cover gasket have to be changed, which means you have to change the valve cover gasket as well. But all these were perfectly dry. There wasn't any liquid on them, as you can see. That one had a little stain on it from the heat, I'm presuming. Okay, so now the oil filter is being removed. You don't need a special socket for it. I don't remember the metric size of it, but it's 1.25 inch socket that was being used. And the filter comes out. It's perfectly, like, not a ton of oil just spills out. It stays, the filter itself stays attached as well. And just yank it out. Alright, here I'm going to place the new filter in, and just hand tighten it. And I forgot to change the O-ring. Whenever you buy a filter for these, it will come with a replacement O-ring. You must replace it. Make sure it just doesn't leak. And you don't have to, you know, E-man these things on. It doesn't take much. But that's the O-ring getting removed and falling to the floor. Alright, we're under the car now. The car has been replaced with jack stand. All you gotta do is just, normally you don't have to remove this cover. There's the oil filter ring, by the way. Normally you don't have to remove this cover to do the oil change. But since we're also changing the belt, you have to. There's 3 screws on each side, and then there's 1 in the center. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, the oil pan drain plug, these are made of plastic, so the oil pan is as well. They are, it's hard to explain how, if you've never seen these before. They're threaded in such a way where, like, all you need to do is just rotate it 3 times and it's locked into place. It's not a normal thread. There's also an O-ring on the plug itself, and each time you do an oil change service, you have to replace the plug. Usually when you buy it as a kit, it comes with the kit along with the oil and the filter, which is what I got. Alright, and you just put the new plug in by hand. You remove them and put them on with a flathead screwdriver. You don't want to tighten it down, but you will feel it just lock into place when it reaches that point. Now what I do after this is I remove and replace the belt. You're not going to see that because I just happen to lay in front of the camera. But it's a 16mm bolt on the tensioner, and the belt is pretty small. All it does is wrap around the alternator, the AC compressor, the tensioner, and the pulley. There's no power steering pump on these. So it's a very simple and straightforward belt. It's easiest to open the tensioner up and just pop it off the AC compressor, and just pull it out from the top, and then you put it on the same way. You wrap it around the alternator up top, and then you pull it down from underneath and just route it and pop it in place. Here I am torquing down the spark plugs and the oil filter. You have to put them down at 22 foot-pounds, the same with the oil filter housing. Now I start to put the coil packs back in. I hear people say that you don't have to put them in the exact same order. I don't know if that's true or not, but I usually do. Put them in the exact same cylinder that they were in beforehand. They are pretty tough to get in by hand. I don't know if just because these are still pretty new. I mean, they're not even 4 years old. But yeah, you just pretty much just push them in until they bottom out, and you just clip them in. Okay, so now we're inside the car. This is where you get to the cabin air filter. It's behind the glove box. There's two tabs, one right there. You're gonna have to use your thumb because they're pretty stiff. And it releases the glove box. And there's a gear right there that likes to fall out. So you just kind of just push it back into its spot, and then just make sure it's still in its spot when you go to put it back in. That square piece is where the cover for the filter housing. It just clips on. There's three tabs that you just got to push down, and it releases the bottom half of the cover, and it just pops off. You just pull it out. Now I like to buy the carbon ones, the ones that are aligned with carbon. It helps remove a lot of the odor out. We've never had an issue with them. What you want to do is when you put it back in, you want to have the writing facing you, and there's an arrow, as you can see, that I made that mistake. There's an arrow pointing at the flow of air, and you want to put it in the right direction. And then you just clip the cover back on. And then you flip the glove box back in, line it up with the gear that's there. All that gear does, and you just push it in, but all that gear does is just slow down how fast the glove box opens. Alright, the last thing you need to do is perform the reset on the cluster. You just hit SR reset, and this will pull all the miles and the days left until the next service interval from the cluster, and it'll display it. And then on the top you can select fixed or variable interval. If you hit fixed, it will let you know within the next 10,000 miles that you need to service the vehicle, or 365 days, whichever is first. And then when you hit perform SRI, what it'll do is it'll zero everything out. So it'll basically saying it's been 0 miles since the last service and 0 days since the last service. And that's pretty much it. If you guys are near the Treasure Coast and in Florida and want your vehicle worked on, just hit me up at vw@craz1000.net. And that's pretty much it for this.